Hello, everyone. This is Mark Fitzpatrick from Tiger Club of Kansas City. It is Tuesday, November 30th, and we will be talking in just a few minutes with Jon Sundvold. A couple of news on the Mizzou sport front. Women's basketball has moved to 7-0, and they will have a couple tough tests coming up against nationally ranked Baylor. Also a strong Missouri State game, both those games on the road. Tiger wrestling team is ranked third in the nation. And in football this morning, Pro Football Focus came out with their all SEC team. And Tyler Beatty, kicker Harrison Mebus, and center Michael Maietti all received first team honors. So congratulations to them. If you are interested in any men's or women's basketball tickets and parking, shoot an email to president@kctigerclub.com and you can get the club's tickets. I'd like to welcome everybody again. Thank Darren Weidick for setting this up each week, and for Paul and Barry Blackman and Barry Cannon for arranging our guests. And our guest today, no, he needs no introduction. He's a Mizzou legend, been a regular visitor to the club. Mizzou Hall of Famer, current SEC basketball analyst, Jon Sundvold. Jon, welcome again.
Hey, Fitz, how are you?
I'm great. It's great to see you. Hope all is well. Let's jump right in. Mizzou basketball win over Paul Quinn last night. Don't know how much you can take from it. The one thing I thought I saw Amari Davis played more point guard. Did that add some stability to that position? Because that's been a problem.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, let's go back and think. First of all, most of us didn't know about Paul Quinn, right? We didn't. Now, I do have a gentleman in my office, Brian England, who worked on Norm Stewart's staff many years ago, and Brian's been with me for 22 years. And Brian went to Baylor, and he told me when the game was Paul Quinn, because I said, I don't know who they are. He said, yeah, they originally started in Waco, Texas, and then moved their school up to Dallas. And then reading Konzo's, some of his comments after the game, I guess there was a relationship with the coach, and that coach and his brother, the coach's brother, they run an AAU team program in Dallas. So maybe that helps with us with recruiting. I'm not sure how that works, but what do you take away from playing in any high school? My first thought, and I went to the game, what I was hoping for is sometimes you need something that gives you some confidence as an athlete. And it doesn't matter who you're playing, as long as you can get in some kind of rhythm. So when you score points, maybe that helps because they've struggled so much. Dejuan Gordon made 4 threes, but he was kind of the only one that shot it well from outside. I mean, this is a team right now going into last night, they're 40% from the field, 27% three-point line. And we all know it doesn't matter how well you play on the defensive end or how strong and rebounding. If you don't score, it's going to be a brutal test when we get to the SEC. So, maybe they shook a few things out. Again, maybe Gordon making some shots helps. Boogie Coleman was, I think, 1 of 6 from 3, so still not shooting it well. Fitz, you did mention Amari Davis. So he looks like he's probably capable of playing a bigger role, meaning handling the basketball. He can score to mid-range. The jump shot's not quite there, but he looks like the part that they were probably trying to get. The hardest thing about the transfer thing that's going on is there is no automatic that when you go from one school to the next that you play the same role you did at the last school. So you may have been a big scorer at the mid-major level, and now you take a step up, and it's difficult. It's a big step. And so it doesn't guarantee that the guys who scored at the mid-major level can score at the top level, even though shooters can always probably shoot. We had Cassius Robertson when he came to Mizzou, and he continued to shoot. So guys can do that. The other thing about the transfer portal, I've seen guys go even from a major to a major, right? A Power 5 to a Power 5, and their roles change. So let's say you're a volume shooter at another place, and you come to, I'm trying to think of, I had Arkansas on Sunday. They've got a kid named Chris Likes who played at Miami, a small guard. Last year he was injured, but he was a preseason All-ACC pick. He's a volume shooter. Well, he's not going to get the volume of shots at Arkansas because Arkansas is right now, they're a top 10 team. So kids have to figure it out and find their way, and coaches have to mix and match. And I think it's difficult. The college game has changed and landscape has changed. So last night, me watching Mizzou play in NAIA school, all I'm hoping for is, can our guys get a feel? I think they're still hesitant. Even last night, hesitant. They don't know each other, haven't played together enough, even though they played together in the summer. I was hoping for a little more fluidity of just saying, hey, we're free to play, do what we can. Now, the score got out of hand, and again, I'm glad some guys made some shots, but that's probably the challenge going forward.
Kobe Brown had 23 rebounds, most by a Mizzou player since 1979, or actually since 1966, first 20 rebound games since 79. He's been moving around a lot, but he's better up front, right? Rather than putting him out on the perimeter.
Yeah, Kobe can do a lot of things. So here's the challenge for Kobe Brown. It appears his mentality is he is a great team player, right? He's a guy that you can put in a lot of spots. Obviously, Konzo's had him handling the basketball out front. That's not necessarily natural for him. Usually when he's had the ball out front, he'll pass it, make a cut. He's got a lot of things he can do. Now, can he take his game and instead of blending in and being just our best player, can he be one of the best in the SEC? Which means, can he mentally, can he try to score 25 to 30 a night? Doesn't mean he has to shoot it, but can he be aggressive enough to try to get 30 points and 15 rebounds? Because on this team, he might have to. And if he does that, and this is all mental, if he tries to do that, then other guys are going to be open. That means he's got to be ultra aggressive with the ball at all times, not just when we're down 5 or down 10, which he's kind of done. But that doesn't seem to be his makeup, but I hope it is. Because with this team, they need Kobe. Kobe needs to just be a guy that's an all-league player. Now, whether he is or not, I don't know. He's capable, but that's a mentality that some have and some don't. Some guys are more passive. Some are type A that says, hey, from the tip, I'm going to try to dominate where I can and when I can. Kobe hasn't done that yet, but hopefully, I think as these games go on and the schedule gets tougher, starting even on the road this week with Liberty, but Liberty or Utah or Illinois, all these games that come up, Kobe's going to somehow figure out that if I don't carry more of a load and most of the load, we're going to have a tough year. So I'm hopeful that mentally he can do that.
Have you seen any of the freshmen that you think will make significant contributions this year?
Not so much. It's such a big jump, and there's not really one of those guys that was a 5-star kid that can play right away. I think he's got the physical tools, the body. I think he can rebound and play defense, the things that Konzo Martin loves to have. Brookshire, I just think they're developmental players, right? They'll slowly get better this year. Maybe you help a certain night, maybe you don't. I think they're guys that will be better as sophomores and juniors and not impact players right away.
Talking to Jon Sundvold. If you'd like to ask Jon a question, please use the chat feature at the bottom, and we will fire those at him when we get done with our discussion. Jon, I've heard a couple of national pundits say that maybe the SEC is as good a conference as any this year. You saw Arkansas play last week. I saw him play twice up here in the CBE before Thanksgiving. I was quite impressed, and the league is shaping up as a juggernaut, I think.
Yeah, you just take last week, Florida beat Ohio State, even Vandy beat Pitt, right? So A&M beats Notre Dame. A&M's a full new squad. They lost 9 guys to transfer portal, bring a bunch in. Auburn beats Syracuse. If I was looking at the league, and I haven't seen everybody, I've had Alabama. They're very good. I've had Kentucky. So if I were to break it down now, and it's obviously early, I'd put Kentucky, Alabama. I really like the Auburn team. Jabari Smith is fabulous as a freshman. They still don't have a kid, Alan Flanagan, back. He's been hurt. And I would stick probably Arkansas with those 3. So there's 4. Tennessee, Florida, Both good teams. Florida may be a surprise because they have transfers. Mike White's, it seems as though he has the team that he'd like to have, an aggressive defensive team. The Castleton kid who averaging nearly 16 points and 10 rebounds, so they've got some offensive firepower. I would probably throw Mississippi State in that bunch, top 25 team, got a couple transfers. They still have Iverson Molinar held over from last year, Tulu Smith holdover from last year. Then the mix becomes with that group. LSU's a team that every year they seem to be a top 4 team in the league. We know they have Xavier Pinson from Mizzou. Darius Days is averaging, nearly 20 points a ball game, shooting it well. So, they'll be somewhat of a mix. I think Ole Miss is pretty good because they've got most of their guys back, and then you add a couple transfers. So the league shapes up to be really good. I do think Kentucky is the one. Now, this is a different Kentucky team. We've known them to be all freshmen all the time, add a couple old guys. Now they're a veteran team because of transfer rules. And Severe Wheeler is running the squad. And as I told John Calipari, we were talking one day, I said, you need Severe Wheeler, the Kentucky type, not the Georgia type. And that's not a knock, but at Georgia, he had a few too many turnovers, even though he led their squad and they did some things. They didn't win enough. Kentucky is only about winning. The Sheboy kid who came from West Virginia, darn near averages 20 rebounds a game. I think he's at 16 a game. They're now a veteran team, which is just unusual for Kentucky. So I'd put them up there. Alabama's really, really good. And as you mentioned, Fitz, you got to see Arkansas and Kansas City. The first 20 minutes against Kansas State, Arkansas was really, really good.
Yeah.
Second 20, they were just okay. But then they beat Cincinnati not shooting the ball well. Arkansas did not shoot the ball well. So they won that game by defense, rebounding, and toughness. And if you do that against any Cincinnati team, that says a little bit about what Eric Musselman has in Fayetteville. Guys that are tough. They will defend. They've not shot the ball well. I had them Sunday against Penn. They didn't shoot the ball well, but they're a team that's got scores. So the league's going to be really, really good, balanced up and down. And I think wherever you travel, you're going to have a tough game when you go in any of those buildings.
Tigers will face that SEC schedule, and then the non-conference schedule sure picks up here in the next week or two. Liberty is not easy, and then we got a trip to Lawrence on December 11th, and Utah. It's a tough road ahead.
Yeah, the game Thursday, I think it's Thursday, Liberty, Richie McKay's team, I had them in the Atlantic Sun Championship last spring. They're well coached, veteran team. I think all their guys came back, used the COVID year. They have a guard who's 5'9", Darius McGee, probably averages about 19. He was the A-Sun Player of the Year last year. He does everything. He has the ball in his hands. He shoots it. He defends. This will be a tough game for Mizzou. It really will be, just because of how Liberty plays, and the guys they have on the team have been together for 3 and 4 years. And then you mentioned, we know Kansas is probably one of the top, I'm saying 4 teams in the country. Utah is a whole new team. Craig Smith comes over as a coach. He was at Utah State. He brought a couple players from Utah State, but Utah did not have a lot left from last year. Larry Kostoviak, who was let go, they didn't have a very good team. But new guy comes in, brings a couple players. We've seen the transfer rule change a lot of things. We know Illinois is powerful. Conzo's had a lot of success against Illinois. But we know Missouri's got to get better. They just have to shoot better. But this schedule coming up, you wish you had a really good team playing all of them. But Missouri's going to have to dig deep, find a way, keep defending like they defend. They do play hard. They've just got to find a way maybe to get easier baskets on a run out or two. We're not big. So if you're not big, you need to shoot the ball well or somehow get some fast break buckets. And then that, if we can do that, then all of a sudden your defense can settle in and try to keep the game pretty close.
John, my understanding is you are still doing games from your home. You've done that for the last year. How is it comfortable now, or is it still a challenge?
Yeah, no, I love it because I'm not traveling. It's a mix. Now it's a mixed bag. I will travel to Kentucky at the end of this month. I actually have a Missouri game from Mizzou Arena coming up, a Utah game. Tom Hart will come in. So I'm seeing across the ESPN board, it's kind of a different, I don't know how they pick which game should be in person or not. I did send out if you need someone to volunteer to just stay home, I'll stay home. But it's you get used to it. It's different when you're at a game. You just see much more because you can just see the flow better. You can see the benches better. But it's become quite natural. I did a game Sunday, like I said, Penn at Arkansas, 3:00 game. So at 5:00, I shut down all my stuff. We're done, and I'm upstairs and hanging out, and going outside to put Christmas lights on. Versus either driving 4.5 or 5 hours home, or staying the night, catching an early flight, getting home the next day of the afternoon. So I think when the conference starts, maybe it'll still be a some you go, some you don't. And I don't know how they pick that.
On a national scale, last week we saw Gonzaga wallop UCLA, and then Duke came back and beat Gonzaga. Is this going to be a great farewell tour for Mike Krzyzewski?
Could be, because they have the best player in the country, the Banchero kid from Seattle. I was trying to think as I watched him, and as I watched Duke play Kentucky, the first game of the year, and then I watched them play Gonzaga. The Banchero kid, I'm trying to think who's been as good as this kid. And I haven't gone through every year, but I go back all the way to Kevin Durant. I mean, he's that kind of player. When you're 6'10", he handles the ball, he shoots the ball, he runs the floor. We haven't seen, and so I know I'm going to miss guys, but like Ben Simmons was a phenom, but he didn't shoot well. I mean, he dominated the ball and could get wherever he wanted to go. So I'm trying to think of who besides Kevin Durant could do all the things the Banchero kid can. So Duke's very good. Obviously Gonzaga, the game they played UCLA, they were unbelievable. And so you look at Drew Timme, who's going to be a first-team All-American, the Holmgren kid who's 7'3" or 4", whatever that number is. But I think the Andrew Nembhard, who played at Florida, is probably their key. When they demolished UCLA, Nembhard was really good. And when they lost a close one to Duke, he wasn't as good. Only he didn't make shots. He didn't do some things. So maybe Nembhard, they've got so many weapons, but Gonzaga is going to be there. Duke's going to be there. Kansas is going to be there. UCLA is going to be there. And then, we'll look at our league. I think Kentucky can play with all of them. They didn't play as well the first game against Duke. But some of that, you're trying to find your way. I thought Wheeler, the point guard, got a little mano-a-mano with the Duke point guard, so that hurts. But Kentucky can play with those teams, and I think Alabama can play with those teams. So I think it'll be a fun year watching college basketball. Just by what will surprise fans is how many transfers each team has, and you'll remember a kid from a different school. I went in, my youngest child, Anna Kate, she is a junior at TCU. And so we went down to a football game. And instead of me hanging around the showgirl, because she's a dancer, showgirl tailgate, that I don't know all those people, I just go in the arena, and I was watching TCU practice. And Jamie Dixon, the guy that I know, and I'm watching them practice, and I'm seeing this kid that I'm thinking, well, wasn't he at A&M last year? And that kid was at USC. I mean, he's got 7 or 8 or 9. And so I think every team that I do, I look at notes and go, oh yeah, that's right. That kid was over there last year. So I think fans are really going to be mind boggled at times when you're looking at different teams going, boy, that kid plays different here than he did last year at the other place.
Long term, is the transfer portal going to be good for the game? And I say this having, when you and Steve Stepanovich played, you're there 4 years. You became part of our culture. You were invested in the university. I think of Danny Manning at KU, 4 great years, and he's a legend. Nobody remembers the Wiggins era at KU. He's there 1 year. That, of course, that's one and done. But the transfer portal, one and done. What's the future of the game?
Well, I don't like it. Maybe I'm just an old guy. I don't like it for the fact that I do think when you go to university, when you do have the option to transfer whenever you want, you probably will at some point. You're either going to be unhappy or someone's going to convince you to go. somewhere else. And so you use it, it's kind of a rental, right? You don't establish your contacts. I think of student athletes in the long run. It's all about contacts in life. And Fitz, you and I, we've known each other forever, right? I mean, it's about establishing and going to school with people and being a part of a university. Whereas if you go to 3 schools in 4 years, now some of these kids go to 3 different high schools in 3 years. So I'm not sure in the long run how it helps them. Many kids are told that if you transfer, and when these coaches are recruiting the transfer portal, they're going to tell the kid, I'm going to let you do certain things. Meaning, most kids want to play in the NBA. That's a long shot, but they don't think that. They all think they can play in the NBA. I made a comment in the Kentucky game. Tom Hart and I were talking about it. And I said, for someone to take a job in the NBA, someone has to lose a job in the NBA. Now, I survived 9 training camps. In your first round pick, you're going to be on that team. If you're a second round pick or below, not even, if you're not picked, and let's say you were an average player in the SEC, but you think you're going to go be a pro, I would like you to go to one of those training camps when you've got guys that are 27, 28, 30 years old, a wife and a couple kids and a home and a mortgage. That's their job. That's their business. It's a rude awakening. And so let's go back to the transfer portal. We have kids that think, well, I want to be an NBA player. And we have coaches thinking, I got to coach them with the idea that they could play at the next level, understanding sometimes that they can't. I always think a coach's job is to win at the collegiate level. And I'm going to take a kid, and it's probably not fair yet, Emmanuel Miller, who's at TCU. Now, I have TCU coming up, I think, in a week or two against A&M. Emmanuel Miller played at A&M last year. He was our leading scorer, leading rebounder. 6'9", fluid, versatile, defender, can do all those things. Then he left A&M. So Jamie Dixon gets him to go to TCU. Now, I'm watching a game the other night because I'm going to do TCU, and I'm watching Emmanuel Miller. He's shooting some 3. He goes like 2 for 5 from the 3-point line. And I'll be honest, he's not a great 3-point shooter. But I'm sure in the roundabout way, he's thinking, and his people are thinking, whoever his people are, and Jamie Dixon's trying to help him. But he'd be really good if he was in the post and scoring and doing his thing. And an NBA scout wants players to be great at what they're great at. And maybe you work on some other things, and we can see if you can shoot down the road. But if I'm watching Miller now as a scout, I'm going, well, he doesn't do a whole lot. Makes a couple threes, but he's not around the rim. He's not in the mid-range game. And well, last year, I'm looking at him like, hey, this kid can really play. And I wasn't worried about his jump shot beyond the 3-point line, right? We've gotten away from players doing what they do well and trying to win games collegiately. And all the transfer portal does is it's every step trying to get a kid, can he play to a different level? A lot of kids will say, I'm transferring, I want to up my game, I want to go to the next level. That level is hard to get to. Your best bet is to stay where you are, play under good, if you have a good coach. Now, some situations are different. Maybe you're not playing at all. Maybe you don't get along at all with the coach. Maybe there's something at some other university you could transfer to. I'm just not for it. And I think it hurts the fan base. As you said, you get used to, if you've got guys that are there for 3 or 4 years, that's a comfort feeling. I don't think it helps the student athletes in the long run, because when it all ends and you're not quite at that NBA level, now you're thinking, okay, where are my contacts and who have I associated myself with? Was there a business school buddy of mine at this school? No. Or was there a professor at a different school? Was there alumni at a third school? And if you did a study there, I think you'd find out that it's been a challenge for any of those student athletes that have ever transferred 3 or 4 times.
Or you could be Michael Porter Jr., who just signed $172 million and has getting his 3rd back surgery. That was kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, you know what? It's always good to sign before you get hurt. It's bad for. I mean, we all wish Michael the best, because we would have loved to have seen him what he could have done at Mizzou, even for that 1 year. But he has fought a lot of injuries, and the timing is everything, right? He was fortunate to sign a contract, and hopefully the surgeries and everything go well that he play again. Because it was fun. It was actually quite fun watching Michael play when he was playing well last year for Denver.
Yeah.
I mean, he was playing. Now, he had a slow start this year, a little bit of pressure maybe signing a big contract. They put him in the starting lineup. And obviously probably was dealing with some injuries there that there's never comfortable if you've got any type of nerve stuff, especially your back or your legs. It's hard to play at that level.
I hope he comes back. I just get nervous because this has been a recurring thing with him on the back. I think it's his third back surgery, isn't it?
Yeah. And honestly, the family's had a lot of injuries, right? A lot of knees and a lot of different things. So, let's hope for Michael. But again, it's good that you sign before you get hurt. That's always a good one.
John, a couple other things before we get the viewers' questions. Have you seen anything early in these early days of the NIL that you think will change the game, or has there been? It doesn't seem like it's been that big a deal yet. What are your thoughts on that?
No, maybe not. Let's start. Again, I'm just old, so I think a scholarship is pretty good, right? So let's start there. And let's move to NIL. So we've came up with this idea. Someone did that student athletes can go out and get paid, earn it. If you can earn it, if your image and your likeness is worth something to somebody, go ahead and do it. Where would that really fit in? It was really designed for the non-full scholarship athletes. Let's say a golfer who gets 15% scholarship, but could give golf lessons in the summer to kids from his hometown, right? Those kind of things. But we knew it would go right to the big sports, football and basketball. And I think it was Gary Patterson at TCU that I was reading an article. He was at their Rotary meeting and said, if we don't buck up everybody here, we're going to lose our kids to the SEC because they'll just start paying them. So it's a legal way now to pay. I look at NIL and I thought, okay, let's say a kid is an entrepreneur and good enough to go get something, whatever if I go to the car dealer and say, hey, can I get a deal with you? I mean, that would be teaching a kid how to be an entrepreneur, right? We do know money changes all of us. There isn't anybody that I've met that money doesn't change. The starting quarterback at Oklahoma who signed all those big deals did not do so well, right? I don't know if money had anything to do with it. But here's what I'm hearing in the NIL world from different schools and different places. Money affects the locker room. I was a professional athlete, right? If the bigger paid guy's not playing well and not playing as much, the guys with the lower contracts aren't happy with the guy with a big contract. It's not his fault, but they're not happy. It's just the way money is. So that would be the question always, is if someone on your team, football or basketball, if the quarterback's getting all the endorsements and the linemen aren't, right? That's a question. So some schools have decided to figure out how boosters could help and maybe give everyone a stipend on the team, something. And while some would think that's a great idea, I would think, well, wait a second. The NIL was supposed to teach me to go use my likeness and my image and sell myself, even if I'm just sitting on the bench. Maybe I just shoot 3-pointers. Maybe I just kick field goals. Maybe I just punt, but let me go sell myself. So now it sounds like we're going to take that away because every school's thinking we've got to find a way to pay all the kids so they're not mad at the ones that are getting the money. So I mean, it's just, to me, it's all craziness. I mean, it's a game with the money's rolling around that some kids will get and some won't. And if we all give some, then they've not learned the business part of it anyway, which again, I'm not against that. I'm for a kid. If that's the rules, go get what you can get and see how it works. I've also thought, and I thought this when I was in college, if you're a student and an athlete, that's 2 full-time jobs. Number 3 has no chance to be good at. If you have a girlfriend, you're not good at it. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Whatever that third thing is, the 2 jobs take all your time. So let's say I'm out trying to hustle, and I don't mind anybody's hustle, but I'm hustling to get a car deal or a whatever deal. That takes away from the student part and the athlete part. And I think it's just tough. I think it's here to stay because they never take something away. But I think it'll be many, many challenges for every university and every school, and every coach is going to try to get boosters together and how to do it. And the SEC is becoming bigger and better. And like I said, when I read the article that Gary Patterson said we better step up in Fort Worth or we're going to lose guys to the SEC, I don't think he's wrong. And I think that's just the way it is.
All right, let's get some questions. Our first one, I'm going to answer. Do you remember Curtis Berry's 20 rebound game? That you were a senior in high school.
I was a senior in high school, yeah.
I was at
remember
that. I was at that game, and it wasn't against Paul Quinn. It was in Allen Fieldhouse, and Tigers went in there and upset. I remember that very well. I just remember we looked up at halftime, and I want to say he may have had like 15 or 17 at half, and we thought this is going to be quite a night for him. So
yeah, I was a high school senior, and I don't know if I had a game that night or not, but I didn't see the game. But my brother Bob was a graduate assistant on Norm's team, and he called the next day and said it was unbelievable. And then I got to play with Curtis for the next 2 years. But yeah, those kind of performances, a 2020 game in Allen Fieldhouse is quite rare. If ever it's been done. But I do remember being a senior. I remember Brother Bob just going on and on about it.
Yeah, it was something. I was, the next year when you were a freshman, Curtis hurt his knee down the stretch. I think that team would have had a real chance to go to the Final Four if he'd stayed healthy.
Yeah, and that was when we were down to, we got down to 9 players.
Including Al Hightower.
Yeah, and again, my brother Bob, I'll bring him into it. So I was probably 18, he'd have been 24. He was our 10th player. So he was scrimmaging with us. And he was a great Division II player at South Dakota State, so he could play with us. Yeah, we didn't have enough guys. And if we would have had Curtis, if he'd have been healthy, you're probably right. That was a team that with the leadership of Larry Drew, who was as good at any point guard in the country, and the power that Curtis brought, that probably would have had a chance.
Next question. Why did the Tigers struggle so much shooting layups and tip-ins? You got the answer.
I don't know. My wife said something. My wife's not a big sports person, but she said something. I'm trying to think which game we were at. Could have been Northern Illinois. That's who we beat, right? Northern Illinois. And
yeah, Northern Illinois.
Northern Illinois. Yeah. So
yeah.
I think my wife's comment was, we don't seem to make many shots. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. So, and it didn't matter sometimes where they're from. But again, I have no idea. That has to be cleaned up in a way that if you don't, you guys know, if you don't score, gosh, the pressure on the defensive end is just a killer. So, what I hope for, like I said, when they played Paul Quinn, does someone get their shooting eye going? And I really believe we got to find ways to score more quickly in the offense. But again, that sometimes takes away how you can win, but maybe easy buckets or easier attempts give you a better chance.
This is a question on college athletics. Brian Kelly is getting $15 million to leave Notre Dame to go to LSU in the middle of the playoffs. Is this unsustainable in college athletics, or is this just the way it will be going forward? And we're interested in your response. You certainly have you being on the board of curators for a while.
Yeah, I'm no longer on the curators. I don't know. It's sustainable because there's so much money and everybody wants to win. That's why it's sustainable. Is it right? I don't care about his job. Is the money right? I mean, we all pay a lot of money, the universities. And for the most part, most of the schools' programs are pretty average, right? There's a few that are above average every year. And that's what everybody's searching for. If I can find the right person, right guy, right gal that leads it. Sustainable because there's TV money. Not sustainable because there's fans in the stands all the time. The numbers are mind-boggling. And to think, and I don't know all the numbers, but some of the schools who are paying, I think maybe it's Auburn are paying 2 coaches, or maybe it's Kansas, like football coaches. Some of these schools are paying 2 or 3 guys up to $20 million not to be coaching.
Texas, that's a big one.
Correct, Texas. And God bless the Longhorns, but they're still not good. They've not been good, and none of us worry about Texas. But what I've thought, Mark, is every fan base, you want your team you remember the best years, right? That's what you remember. So you think, and you want your team to be that good all the time. You can talk to Nebraska fans, right? They long for those days of Johnny Rodgers and Jerry Tagge and all those guys, right? Back in the days in the 70s when they were winning national championships. And then when Frazier came as a quarterback and Krause, they've not been there for many, many years, but they all search. Now the SEC is different because it seems to have more money. And I'll say this about someone going to LSU. The last 3 coaches have won national championships at LSU, right?
Yeah.
So Brian Kelly's sitting there at Notre Dame. He's been in that Final Four, not been close, kind of close, but he knows. He can go to LSU. They've got athletes right now. And so coaches that want to win it all. But same thing. Okay, Lincoln Riley, was he afraid of that SEC, you think? Probably so. I mean, you can go out to the Pac-12. If he can rebuild and remake USC into that sexy job that it always was and has been, they've got tons of players in California, but that's an easier league to compete in than the SEC. So I think it's here to stay. All the sports stuff, whether it's athletes getting paid, athletes transferring, coaches leaving, moving, and then really all of us watch our school and hope they do well. That's what we all do.
With what you're seeing this year with Mizzou and what Musselman and Oates have done at Arkansas and Alabama, how do you view the Mizzou basketball job nationally now, especially with another change in realignment?
Well, obviously, Conzo's got work to do. Just watching the talent on the floor. Last year was the year kind of that Conzo had his team. They were so good December and January, and I think – trying to think when they beat Tennessee on the road at Tennessee, I think we were ranked 10th. And then we lose 7 of our last 10. Could have been turmoil on the team, right? Things didn't go quite right. And all of a sudden that team is done with a very average year that looks so promising. And when you have those things go on and it looks like maybe they've missed just a bit in recruiting for this season, there's challenges ahead for Missouri basketball. There's no doubt about it. I don't think many of us as fans want to be average. I hope we don't want to be average. I always say the SEC wanted Missouri in the SEC for its basketball program, and we haven't really held up our end of the bargain. And we often have kids from St. Louis not come to, or Kansas City not come to Mizzou that we wish they would, and somehow we've got to find a way to get them there.
Question, how's the officiating in the SEC compare with other conferences? I mean, it is basically the same officials working among several conferences, isn't it?
They can. There's certain guys that stay more in 1 or 2 leagues. I think it's a hard game to officiate. The game's fast, right? There's a lot of calls that are, block charge, this, that. You can review more things than you could in the past. I think it's hard to be an official. I played for a coach that, Norm Stewart would say let's not put it in the officials' hands at any point. You might get a bad call. You might get a good call. For the most part, they pretty much average out a good or a bad call as far as good and bad. I don't think officials control games. I know some fans do. I know people get loud on Twitter. What you have to know as a player, because I never coached. So as a player, what you have to know is how is that official officiating tonight, right? Close calls, not close calls. So I remember as a player, if things were tightly called, when I had the ball in my hands, I often tried to get my body into a defender to see if I get to the free throw line. If the whistle was blowing, especially in rivalry games, if we played Kansas State or Kansas, I always thought early, how are they blowing this? Because if they want to keep everybody from being hyper at the start, if there's a lot of whistles, then let's get our body into their body from our offensive standpoint and see if we can draw contact. The other part was Norm Stewart's offenses. We played more towards the rim. We played from inside out, which is a different game, totally different than today's world. But I think players, I don't know every player, but players should take better control of that than coaches, meaning figure it out on the floor. It's not hard to figure out how games being called. And if it's being called where you can hold and grab, well, then hold and grab, figure it. And if players think about it, they can control it much better than the sideline can.
On the officials, I noticed working games the last couple of weeks how fit these guys are. What happened to Jim Bain and Johnny Oakley? How did they keep up?
The hard part is I see, when we traveled, back when we were doing games and traveling, I mean, these guys, 4 games and 6 nights, right? They're traveling and flying, and it would be very difficult, very, very difficult to officiate that many games, but that's how they make quite a bit of money, right? They and the big ones and the good ones are doing the best games, and the coaches want them doing the best games. And when you get to the lower tier games, I can see that too. If I'm doing a lower tier game, if it's 2 of the worst teams in the SEC, and it's not on the ESPN, but maybe it's on SEC Network, our officials are going to be the younger guys. They're testing out, or they're trying to work into the rotation.
Next question. Mizzou basketball did a great job of getting students to attend the early games. In general, though, Mizzou struggles with attracting students, alums, and local fans in large numbers. Can we have the teams we want to have without the fans first showing up in larger numbers?
What Al Davis said, just win, baby. I mean, it's Missouri fans are Missouri fans. We are the show me state. When we win, I think our fans are really, really good. There's no doubt. But if we're not winning, there's probably other things to do. I understand what students have. Will we pack it in for an average team? No, I don't think so. We've never done that in basketball or football. It's not who we've been. You'd like to say that. That first game was really good to see the student body. Student body was much better than the general audience, the alumni, so to speak. But I think Missouri is show me. We want something that's better than to show up, and you'd like it to be differently, especially because when you're recruiting, you bring a kid in, you'd like to have bigger crowds, but it's just the way it is.
One of our viewers, Jay Hayden, just reminded us that Paul Quinn won an NAI national championship in KC in the 90s. So
that's good.
Does the transfer portal work against NIL?
Does it work against?
Doesn't it work against the NIL? In other words, if a kid's moving around, is he going to be able to command an endorsement?
Well, so let's go back to what we first talked about. If the kid can go out and get the endorsement, right? And it's probably a year-to-year thing. So then he could transfer. If it's the alumni, if it's the coaches that organize alumni to have a pool of money to help kids, then the kid doesn't have to go get the NIL. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's so a transfer can say, well, if that school is going to give me X amount a month, not the school, but the NIL little thing that they've built versus me going to get it. That's where I think it's now becoming. It's not like again, I'm all for that kid going to get his deal done. I think it's great because it teaches the kid what life's about. And it's about the only thing now in Power 5 basketball, football, those 2 sports, not the rest of them. That's the only thing that would teach a kid life lessons, because right now they got the best food, they've got the best medical, they fly, charter planes. Everything's taken care of for you. When you get done, none of those things are there. And then you're sitting there going, okay, now how do I survive? And I think if you interviewed a lot of former players in the last 10 years that got out of school, they would tell you it's a shocking experience that not everybody loves you anymore. It's going to do stuff for you. So because I'm an entrepreneur and I built a business, is this NIL thing would really be cool if that kid had to do it and learn that someone, let's say he comes to Sundvold Financial and I don't think the kid's any good as a player. Why would I? You're not going to do a commercial for me. I don't need you. But if he heard no, that's the real world. I mean, that's the real world. But I'm going to try this guy down here, and I'm going to try this guy, and I'm going to try this guy. I'm going to try to sell my shirt or whatever it is. I think that's the best real world stuff we have, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think, again, I'm going to Gary Patterson, just reading what he said. Hey, we got to buck up. We got to find a way that we get everybody some money so that the kids don't leave the SEC. Well, that's not teaching them anything.
Yeah.
Then we're back to the square one of your rear end's white for you the whole time. And then when you're done, I'd hate to say it this way, but when you're done, you're probably chafed. And now you've got to now you got to find some powder and figure out your way of life. But again, I played for a coach and my father who raised me that life isn't, you just don't get stuff all the time. So I think Norm would have been perfect in this stuff. He'd have said, John, go out and see what you can get. But he'd have said, you go. And then that first no, and the second no, would you stop? Well, we all know as business people, hey, it may take 10 contacts, or does it take 50, or does it take 100? Well, kids, if you're all going to get a stipend, we haven't taught them anything. We're back to the same old stuff that all we want you for is to perform on the field, and we'll take care of everything else until you're done. And then we'll shoo you out there in the real world. And believe me, as we all know, it's not a fair world out there. It's just not a fair fight. So you better be ready. And I've always told athletes when I talk to them, student athletes, you've been beaten down before. I mean, sports is hard. You lose more than you win. So, do that in life. And that's why the NIL to me could be great, but they're going to mess it all up just because that's what we do.
That's a great analysis. What do you think the result of the Kansas investigation? Do you get a feel for that?
I think they'll be fine. It's Kansas, right? It's not Western Kansas. Kansas will be fine. That's all I know. I don't even know what it is and what they've done, but they'll be fine. It's Kansas. They'll be good.
Who's the best play-by-play man you ever worked with?
Wow, that's too hard. I mean, think of this, and I'm going to miss somebody. I mean, I worked with Joe Buck and John Rooney at Missouri. And I worked with, Bob Costas, doing a couple games with Bob. Ron Franklin, I did a number of games, per year. Dave Armstrong was great. Fred White was great. Tom Hart in the SEC is fun to do games with. I mean, they're all great. I mean, they're, the fun part about everybody's different. Every analyst you'll hear is different. They all have their own set of eyes. I was part of teams. So what you try to do is, how do I make him better? And how do you work as a team? So if Tom Hart and I are doing a game on a computer in my basement and he's in Atlanta, or when I worked with Bob Costas, which was a thrill, or a young Joe Buck at the time, or, the powerful pipes of Ron Franklin. I mean, I've worked with Gus Johnson, Dan Schulman, every guy out there probably except Al Michaels. I'm thinking. I'm just kind of looking at this list of who's done basketball games. And when I was with ESPN, first starting out, every guy, it seemed like I was with someone. And I did Gus Johnson. He and I did some CBS together. That was fun. Kevin Harlan. Gosh, how can I forget Kevin Harlan? We got to do some Missouri-Kansas games together. And then Kevin and I did some NCAA stuff together. Yeah, and they're all different, and they're all fun, and they're all unique. And the talented ones are so good at it that you just try to stay out of their way and not screw them up.
Well, that's a Hall of Fame list you just went over.
Yeah.
There. So,
pretty lucky for me.
We all think you're the best analyst in the business. So,
you're a little jaded, I think.
I think so. So anyway, John, thank you. Always great to talk to you. And we look forward to listening to you. So you will have, we'll see you on the Utah-Missouri game on the 18th,
yes.
correct?
Yes. Tom Hart is flying in from Atlanta, and I'm hoping Tom's on it. Only he's scheduled on it. Sometimes if he gets a bowl game, I don't even know if bowls have started by then, but hopefully Tom and I'll be on that game. And that'd be a good, hopefully this non-conference coming up for the next 3 weeks is going to be tough for Mizzou, but let's hope they shoot lights out and get a couple wins and get some fans excited about attending Mizzou basketball. It'll be kind of fun.
Let me ask you one question, if I might, before you go. Since you had been on the board of curators and have been pretty involved in the university, what kind of feel do you get for the new administration under Desiree Reed-Francois?
I've stayed a little bit away, so I don't know. I met Desiree briefly. So, I mean, I think the curators, to be honest, if they get over involved, it's not their job, to be honest. And some curators can. It's best to hire a president of a system and then, I don't say stay away, but in anything, there's probably a few curators like to be the AD or like to overstep their bounds. And I think our current athletic director's got to build her program and what she wants to do and her vision with Moon Choi on that campus. That's how I would best think of what a board of curators should do versus just getting involved in everything, because that seems to screw a lot of stuff up.
Yeah, I can think of a couple who shall remain nameless. So
yeah, we'll just be quiet on all that.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, John. Jon Sundvold, Mizzou Hall of Famer, SEC analyst. Look forward to hearing you on TV in the coming weeks. So
thanks, Mark. Enjoyed it, and hey, go Tigers, everybody.
All right. Hey, folks, next week, as we approach the national signing date for football letters of intent, we will have a very popular guest from last year, Danny Heidert, who's a recruiting guru out of St. Louis. So make sure you join us for that. As always, check us out at kctigerclub.com and for information on memberships and upcoming events. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you next time with Danny Heidert.